Saturday afternoon on Fox. Lamar hasn't been great against the Steelers at all, but he and the Ravens are still getting a lot of love from Vegas. Almost 7-point favorites. Injury note, Aguilar out. Bateman didn't practice yesterday. And on the Steelers side, Pickens out again, Brew. Your Ravens deserve to be 6.5-point favorites.
Nick thinks he knows my answer.
I know what's going to happen.
All right, I'm going to tell you what.
I know what's going to happen.
Obviously, they've lost 8 of 9 to the Steelers. They just lost to them a few weeks ago. You would think, no, that's awfully high. But I'm here for it. They're going to win by a touchdown. And that's not a huge blowout. I'm not predicting a blowout. It's 6.5. They're going to win by 7 or to 10 points.
Oh.
7 to 10 points. So he thought I was going to be like, oh, no, I'm scared and all this. No, they're going out there to win by 7. I don't think Pittsburgh, as good as they are, is going to score enough points. Like, they only scored 18 in the first game with George
Baltimore
Pickens.
must have blown them out.
Exactly. No, I get it. That's fair. But that was with George Pickens, who's their deep threat, and that's one of the strengths of Russell Wilson. Pickens had a big game, too. 8 catches, 89 yards in that first game. He's not there. That is huge to me. All right, so Pittsburgh's going to have to run the football a little more, and obviously that is the strength of the Baltimore defense. And I think, look, I know Lamar has not been good for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I look forward to him balling out so Nick can't say he chokes in what he determines the big games, all right? But I just think that they're not going to get swept. I'm not predicting they get swept by the Steelers this season. They got a ton on the line. I got Baltimore by a touchdown.
No, they don't deserve to be 6.5.
That's fair, but they're going to win by 7.
Like, this is not Nick's Mahomes Mountain or the tiers with the committee where it's a rich tapestry. This is, like, straightforward.
Yeah.
Like, the Steelers have dominated this team in recent memory this year. And when they play, like, these games are tight. Like, when you look at the numbers with these two teams, Baltimore Ravens, again, they shouldn't turn the ball over because if they don't, they have a chance to win. But to say that they're 6.5-point favorites just based on, well, they got the better quarterback. Well, they've had the better quarterback. We say they have the better personnel and team. Well, they've had that in recent years, and they tend to lose these games. Like, they lost last year. 10-17, both matchups.
One with Lamar, one without Lamar.
That's the biggest margin of victory between these two teams since 2019.
Yeah.
Like,
they're all close.
They're all very close. So, no, they don't deserve
But who's going to win?
Yeah, I'm actually going with the Steelers.
Well, and listen,
he just said that.
I gotta say,
I agree with me.
My dear friend Brew is a little on tilt about the Ravens. We know it. We know this because
I admit it. I've
the
been
audience
shaking.
The other day, that it hasn't been a pleasant ride. When this line first came out and it came up on the show on Monday, and I said, "You won't believe how big of a favorite the Ravens are," and I said it. Brew said, and I quote, "That's crazy." So
you remember that? 'Cause I don't remember that. I'll admit the line should not be that, but I'm telling you they're going to win by 7.
Right, that's what I thought you were. That's what I thought.
Yeah, it shouldn't be
That's what I thought you were going to say at the beginning. That Wilds was going to say is confusing.
You think it should be 6.5?
Which is that it shouldn't be
seems
this
like
line.
a lot.
It seems high.
But, right. Okay. But the other thing is this. The reason I said Brew's a little on tilt is yesterday, for reasons that in the moment weren't totally clear to me, Bruce seemed really aggressive towards Greg and his belief in the Texans.
Right?
And he was like, oh, you're just looking for a reason to say you believe in them. You don't believe in it. The Texans have been disappointing you. And then Greg correctly was like, is that the same record as your team?
Yeah.
And your answer was, yeah, but my team's better. And well, I don't know that that's true. I really don't.
That's how I'm looking at you.
I don't know that the Ravens are better than the Texans.
Who's got the better quarterback?
Here we go. Yeah. This is the same.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's the same
better run game.
And that's where it ends. Good. That's where the story ends there because they beat
them 34-7 last year in the playoffs.
Oh, last year in the playoffs is different. We're not talking about last year,
CJ was better last year.
So listen,
we're not talking about last year. Really? Oh my God.
That this is a massive game for Lamar. And I don't think that it's impossible for him to play well in a big game. I just think it's overwhelmingly unlikely.
Okay. I'm going to be really honest with y'all. This has been a bizarre week of takes that I don't know if I'm feeling just like extra or what. I have been sick, honestly, if you can't tell. I've definitely been sick. My nose, my throat, my ears, like literally everything. But like, okay, it's wild. It's highly unlikely that Lamar won't play great in big games. That's just insane. That's an insane statement to make. That's number one. Number two, when he says, oh, we're not talking about last year, except all of Nick's arguments constantly are on previous years. Josh Allen, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles. It's constantly like, well, we saw this last year. We saw this 2 years ago. And now when it's with the Ravens, when it's a benefit for the Ravens, we're not talking about last year. It's like, okay. And was that Texans game not a big game last year in the playoffs? Like, I didn't know. Okay. But you guys know the one example that I like to use a lot is when I refer to Vegas. And I talk about how when you get to the, the one game roulette where a lot of casinos will have the numbers and the colors in terms of what the past was, where it'll say like, it'll show you the last like 20 spins and it'll be like 5 black, 20 red, 33 black, 43 black, and it's fake. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's real, but it doesn't actually. People think that they can use that as data. They could say, wow, there was 5 reds in a row. That means it's due for a black, and it's like, no, the odds do not change. They do not change. It could be 100 reds in a row. It is no greater chance of it being a black than not, because you're talking about on infinity. Like that's what it is. Like it's when you're talking about stats like that, it's infinity. It's endless. So the odds stay the same. And that's why it's so perfect that we have Vegas now saying 6.5 favorites. And they're saying, but they always do this. They always play close. They always do this. Now, if we lived in a perfect sports vacuum, then we would say exactly that past means absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter what happened in 2019, 2020, 21. This is different teams, different coaching staff. Some of the players are the same, but they're different players. Lamar Jackson in 2019 is not the same player that he's in 2024. He's not the same player that he was last year. Like everything's different. And Groundhog's Day highlights this beautifully, where you can have the same day again and again and again, and yet you still can't repeat and maximize and still have the exact same day because it's essentially impossible. So the past really doesn't matter. And I've made a statement like that before, and people say, but you always refer to the past about teams you don't like. And it's like, no, the past can matter when you're talking about the franchise as a whole. Are they making certain decisions to improve and grow? Is the same quarterback consistently failing under an array of different circumstances? Have they consistently underperformed? And can we actually lock in on that individual player or that individual team, coach, whatever it may be? And I don't think that's what we see with Lamar Jackson. And the proof of that is the fact that Vegas isn't like, oh, well, Lamar usually struggles against Pittsburgh. They don't care about thoughts and feelings. This is strictly what do they think mathematically is more likely to happen. And so again, the past is the past in that regard. If we're referencing like a Dak Prescott who constantly has shown to kind of fail in these big moments, and we can actually point that it is actually legitimately Dak and not a game plan, not bad luck, not just playing a better team. We can actually point and say that Dak deserves some concrete blame for. That's different. And we can't just explain it away with age. If we say something like the Dallas Cowboys haven't won, haven't made an NFC championship game in 30 years, referencing the past makes sense. Now, if the Dallas Cowboys were an awesome team this year and they had 13 wins and they were flowing and they got the number 1 seed, I would not say they can't make the NFC championship game. They haven't done so in 30 years. That would be irrelevant. That's why when you're using the past to kind of explain what the future is, it's not this like, it's a more complicated discussion, honestly. Like it's not just this like strict cutoff. Sometimes referencing the past makes sense when you're talking about management, GM, maybe a coach who consistently has made bizarre calls in the playoffs, for instance. Like, you would be concerned, you could make the argument, Dan Campbell, it makes me a little nervous going into the playoffs because some of his decision-making based off what I saw last year. Like, that can kind of make sense. But if you're kind of like, oh, Lamar Jackson, some of his performances in the playoffs have not been great, therefore we know that he chokes in big moments. He's had too many big moment games that he's played great in, or that he's stepped up in. And that's why I feel like there's a disconnect. And I pointed out that I feel as though that it's been the Baltimore Ravens as a whole that have struggled. And again, Lamar is part of those struggles. It's not to say that Lamar doesn't get any of the blame. But I just think that there's always too much focus on Lamar. Like, that's what I just, I push back on, quite frankly. I really, really do. And I'm very adamant about that. So that's that one aspect. Because, one of his big game, stats that gets used against him is like, when he's a rookie. And it's just like, what are we supposed to do with some of that? And then the one year he was like concussed, like, I think it was a concussion. So I just don't care. And Vegas doesn't either. And Vegas isn't in the business of trying to figure out, your thoughts and feelings. Again, the one other question mark about that would be is if Mike Tomlin really had the answer on how to slow down. That's where sports is not perfect stats. It's not perfect, 50% heads, 50% tails, because there obviously is a true human element into it. If it was just basic math and 100% math and stats, gambling would be the easiest thing. And instead of Wall Street, you would have sports gamblers, and Vegas would be even more popular than it is. And I mean, you would literally have like these private equity firms would hire statisticians to gamble professionally, and they would make billions of dollars. And it obviously doesn't happen like that. And so, but I'm on the record also saying that if the Steelers really truly had a real answer to how to they had the secret sauce on how to stop and slow down Lamar Jackson, it would show up. It would be too obvious. He would be exposed, as people always say. Oh, so-and-so has been exposed. And every team would be able to use it against him for moving forward. If it was as simple as, and I'm being very basic and I'm making up an example. I can't be more clear than this. This is a made-up example. Lamar Jackson can't throw. And when you blitz him, he panics. Okay? If that was the secret sauce, then everybody would see it. Mike Tomlin would show it, and they would say, oh my God, that's what Mike Tomlin does every single game. It's very obvious, and that's what all other teams would do. They'd blitz him and force him to throw, and he would fail and lose, and his passer rating would essentially be like that, not just for the Steelers, but for pretty much any good defensive team that could, get after him. And we do not see that. That is not what we see. So that's why I don't feel as though that the Steelers or Mike Tomlin have this magic secret sauce. And I think that Lamar Jackson has played enough big games in his career, games that mattered. Again, primetime game, standalone game, on the road, Baltimore Ravens, 49ers last year. Lamar took them apart. How is that not a big game? That was a game where they were like the MVPs in bounce, even when he played 2 in Miami Dolphins. Like those, I remember those, I think those games were like back-to-back games or at least within the same month. Those were big games. Those were important games. It was a battle to be who's the best team in the NFL, number 1 seed, MVP. Like those all had big stakes on it. I understand not as big as, say, the playoffs, but you either choke or you don't. You either can handle the big moment or you can't. And Lamar has played other games. And again, why would the Steelers be a big moment for him, but not the Bengals? It's one thing if he struggled in all division games, then we could be like, yeah, there's pressure to win those divisional games. But we don't see that. We do not see that. So it's just been a combination of him being young, him having a bad game, not a perfect moment, him not having a team around him, the right game plan, the team coming up small, which is why I keep using that last year's example against the Chiefs as a reference point. Every single player on that roster, came up small, coaching staff included. And so, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of absurd. I'm not saying that I believe that the Baltimore Ravens deserve to be 6.5 because I don't really care. Quite frankly, I do think the Steelers are a good team. I really do. I do think that they're potentially a team that really needs to be full strength to kind of really unleash what they are. If having someone like a Pickens gives them a +20, I think potentially with the Steelers, if you take him from the team, you don't now lose 20, you potentially lose 40, for instance. I think it might kind of have a more of a domino effect on what they want to do offensively, which we've seen that with similar players. We've seen a little bit of that with like an AJ Brown, especially when you didn't have Saquon, in seasons past and stuff like that. So again, not everything is 100% mathematical. It makes perfect sense. So I could see why the Ravens have that leg up, especially if you don't buy into this whole voodoo nonsense of Lamar Jackson unable to take the you just can't make it this far and be as great as Lamar to be able to just not be able to handle that moment. I just don't believe it. I really don't. Listen, I've played with unbelievable players who can't take the pressure, but they've reached the limit of what they were able to succeed. They reached their limit of what they were able to do. They couldn't keep going to that next level because that next level, just even basic games at that next level, ended up being too much pressure for them. And I just don't see it. I really, really don't. Like, here's even just like a borderline silly example, but this was the Chiefs versus Ravens week 1. And obviously it's not this perfect box score, 26 for 41. That's not this necessarily amazing, 273 yards, 1 touchdown. But he only took 1 sack and had a 90 rating, which again, if you're choking, you're going to play worse. But then 16 carries for 122 yards. And yeah, I remember that game. He missed some throws, but he also made some beautiful throws. Again, if you choke, if you really can't handle the moment, it does kind of become binary. It's not like, hey, I'm a 100% player. I'm a 100 rating, but when I play in big moments, I shrink down to like 90 or 80. That's not how it works. Again, you either can handle the moment or you can't. If you want to make the argument that Lamar Jackson's not good enough to be great against great teams, which again, I'm not buying into, that is technically the better argument. That is technically would be closer to the truth than people saying that he can't handle the moment in the head. Because that's what it is. If you want to say Lamar Jackson is great, but he can't play great against great teams, I'm more open. Again, I'm not saying I agree with it, but that argument would theoretically have more truth to it, more validity to it, than people saying that he's great only when it doesn't matter. That I wholeheartedly reject. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Baltimore Ravens? Do you think they deserve to be 6.5-point favorites? Do you think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win? And do you agree with Nick Wright that? Let's listen to it again.
Sorry about that.
I do think that this is a massive game for Lamar. And I don't think that it's impossible for him to play well in a big game. I just think it's overwhelmingly unlikely.
Do you think that it's overwhelmingly unlikely? Let me know in the comments below. I'll read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.